And here are the first alarming results of Donald Trump's visit to Beijing and his statements that the US doesn't owe anyone anything. Donald Trump's advisors fear that China may attack Taiwan within the next 5 years or even sooner. And while previously American intelligence signaled hypothetical scenarios of war, after Trump publicly stated that this Taiwan, it turns out, is trying to attack China, and therefore the US will not defend the island from a Chinese attack, and that the US will no longer sell weapons to Taiwan. The appetites in Beijing have grown, and Xi Jinping is ready to close this chapter of history with Taiwan, understanding that Trump is weak, and the US, after the war with Iran, well, they clearly can't handle another war. Xi Jinping is now trying to move China to a new position, where he basically says, we are the new rising superpower, we are already on equal footing with you, and Taiwan is mine, so just give it to me. And unfortunately, Trump's words have triggered a very unpleasant trend. Let's break it down. My name is Alexei Pichi, let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I have a request. I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this episode, and leave your comment under this video either now or at the end of the episode, because it's very important for promoting content on YouTube. I would really appreciate it. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, people from the inner circle of the US president, after the historic summit with Xi Jinping, are anonymously telling Axios that Taiwan is now under a real threat of war within the next 5 years, if not sooner. And this is the result of Donald Trump's statements. And next, I'll quote Axios. Some of President Trump's close advisors fear that the most significant practical outcome of the China summit was the increased risk that Chinese President Xi Jinping will still invade Taiwan in the coming months, years, potentially cutting off the chips that are used to power artificial intelligence in American companies. Let me explain about the chips. This refers to the large-scale production of microchips in Taiwan. The company TSMC is a global giant, and the US depends on their chips, which, by the way, is the real reason why Washington, to be honest, has supported Taipei for years. But why now, and what exactly happened at the summit? Trump and Xi Jinping, so that these fears became real. And now White House advisors say that Trump essentially gave Xi Jinping several things at once. First, a rhetorical capitulation on Taiwan. Aboard Air Force One, flying from Beijing to Washington, Trump said the following to Brett Baier from Fox News. We are being asked to travel 9,500 miles to go to war for Taiwan. I am not seeking that. I want them to quiet down a bit. By they, he means Taiwan. The President of the United States advises an ally to quiet down, so as not to provoke the rapist. Second, Trump admitted that he discussed with Xi Jinping the sale of weapons to Taiwan for $14 billion, and he said that this issue is currently on hold. This was after the conversation with Xi Jinping. This is unprecedented because no American president before him, at least publicly, has ever admitted to consulting with Beijing on issues of military supplies to Taipei. Third, it's about NVIDIA chips. The US agreed to supply advanced graphics cards to China. This is a partial lifting of restrictions on semiconductors. Those very restrictions were imposed precisely because China could use advanced chips for military purposes, including the development of systems for a possible invasion of Taiwan, and this also reduces Taiwan's own strategic value, because that's where those very advanced microchips are produced. And here's what Axios writes next, and this is just a killer quote. Trump's advisor said, "This trip signals that the US is not economically ready." Another one added directly, "There is no way to be economically ready." These are interesting phrases because these are advisors to the President of the United States talking about America's inability to withstand a war over Taiwan if it happens. Because Taiwan produces more than 90% of the world's most advanced chips at TSMC factories. If China seizes Taiwan, the American artificial intelligence industry, military electronics, and the entire high-tech economy will be left without these superchips. And the Wall Street Journal previously estimated that the possible losses to the American economy could reach trillions of dollars in the very first year after Taiwan is occupied by China. What does Taiwan itself think about all this? Taipei officially emphasized that the US policy has not changed, but at the same time, Taipei urged the US not to stop selling weapons to the island. Sorry, but this is a public request not to do what the American president is actually already doing, not selling them weapons. Once again, Trump has completely put on hold the sale of a $14 billion arms package to Taiwan. And so, the National Security Advisor, in particular Waltz, came out after the summit in Beijing and stated, quote, "Beijing doesn't get to vote on what weapons we sell to Taiwan. Well, the hint is that it's not up to Beijing to decide. Sounds nice, I won't argue." He slammed his fist and said, "No, we decide for ourselves." But in reality, the $14 billion arms package is frozen. You can insist Beijing doesn't decide, but after Trump's talk with Xi, the package was frozen. Trump discussed this with Xi Jinping. Trump advises Taiwan to keep quiet. Now, NVIDIA graphics cards are also going to China. Trump's advisors say they're worried about an invasion in the next 5 years. That's a great scenario, isn't it? Moreover, these same advisors to Trump point out that for China, this is actually an achievable goal, especially while the US is bogged down in a conflict with Iran and their military supplies are depleted. And experts are already saying that American ammunition is insufficient for a serious confrontation with China after the war with Iran. And that's even though the American army is already engaged in the Middle East. And Trump has withdrawn aircraft carriers from the Indo-Pacific region. And here is the final picture of this whole story. Trump held a summit with Xi Jinping, and his own advisors are now afraid that he has created the conditions for a Taiwan crisis. Xi Jinping received rhetorical concessions and chips, and the understanding that Trump does not want to fight for Taiwan. He finally squeezed a clear phrase out of the American president: "We will not fight for Taiwan." The Pentagon with depleted stockpiles after Iran. If Trump's advisors are right, well, we have at most 5 years left until this issue stops being hypothetical. As a result, the Trump administration is now internally torn between two camps. The Pentagon. The first camp says that we urgently need to arm Taiwan while there's still time. These are the National Security Advisors and the Pentagon. The second camp tells Trump, no, don't provoke Beijing while trade negotiations are ongoing. This is the economic bloc and people close to Elon Musk, by the way, whose son is learning Chinese. During the summit, Elon Musk boasted that his son is learning Chinese. Why? That's an open question. And while these two camps are fighting, the $14 billion weapons package for Taiwan is on hold. Trump's advisors stated directly today that they are afraid Xi Jinping has concluded that the window of opportunity has finally opened. And the final touch? Trump, of course, loves grandeur, the special reception that Xi Jinping skillfully organized. It was a walk through the closed gardens of Junnan and Zhongnanhai, where no foreign guests are allowed. There was a state banquet. There was even a personal promise to send rose seeds that Donald Trump liked. All of this, as you understand, is not a coincidence. This is an atmosphere of privileged relations deliberately created by Beijing. Xi Jinping understood perfectly well who he was dealing with and which buttons to push, and it seems that Xi Jinping managed to lower the American president's guard. And this is very bad news. I'll leave it at that. As usual, share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. It's very important so you get notifications and don't miss new episodes. And subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link is in the description of this video. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Bye everyone.